Athens was known to be the capital of idolatry, and the Apostle Paul went in there to share the gospel. In Acts chapter 17 verse 16, it says he was distressed by the number of idols that he saw there. The Apostle Paul was invited to the Areopagus, which was where a group of prominent Athenians would meet to discuss and debate ideas. The Apostle Paul began his address in Acts chapter 17 verse 22 saying, "I see in every way that you people are so religious. I even found an altar with an inscription to an unknown God." What was this unknown God, and why did the Apostle Paul start his message saying that? If we go down to verse 28, still in Acts chapter 17, the Apostle Paul says, "For in him we live and move and we have our being." This was actually a quote from a Cretan philosopher, Epimenides, whom the Apostle Paul called a prophet in Titus chapter 1 verse 12. You see, Epimenides wasn't recorded in the biblical text as a prophet, but the Apostle Paul knew that this was someone the Athenians held in high regard. To understand Epimenides and the context of the unknown God, we have to go back to between 5th and 6th century BC. There was a great plague in all of Athens, people dying and stricken with sickness. Being the capital of idolatry, they had sacrificed to all the idols that they knew, but still the plague did not budge. And then they heard of this great Cretan seer called Epimenides, and they invited him to come and try to sort the problem for them. You see, Epimenides practiced monotheism, which is he believed in one God. So just entering into the city of Athens, he could already see what the problem was. So he conducted an experiment, which some would say is similar to what Gideon did with the fleece, if you remember the story. Epimenides asked for a flock of sheep, both black and white, and he asked that the sheep not be fed the night before so they were hungry the next morning. So the next morning, he made a public prayer in front of all of them, saying that if God was willing to show the people of Athens mercy, let him pick the sheep that he wants and they would sacrifice that sheep to him. And he asked that when he releases the sheep to graze, let the ones that God choose lay down on the grass and not eat. As you know, this was almost impossible because that was the usual grazing time of the sheep, and the sheep were hungry. In a twist of event, when he let the sheep go into the Mars Hills, which coincidentally was the same hill which Paul was preaching to the Athenians centuries later. Isn't that just poetic justice? So when he let the sheep go into the field, not just one, but several of the sheep laid down and didn't eat. And then the Athenians made altars at those spots, and then they sacrificed the sheep, after which the plague ended. And then the Athenians, not learning their lesson, wanted to name the altar. They wanted to know which god it was that protected them and saved them from this plague, and they wanted to name the god. Epimenides, knowing that this would defeat the whole idea and they would just add this to the number of idols that they already worshipped, he didn't want them to name it. But then they agreed to name the altar for the unknown god. Now, the altar to the unknown god served as a witness to the Athenians that there is a God greater than all the gods that they worship that they are yet to know, thus the unknown God. The fact that we see the Apostle Paul quoting Epimenides in Acts and in Titus means that he knows the story, which was why he used that as a witness to try to preach the gospel to the Athenians at that time. And the question is this: are there other witnesses in other parts of the world and in history that point people to the Almighty God whom they are yet to know? 2 years ago, I was plagued with this question, which I asked my pastors, and then he recommended this book, Eternity in Their Hearts. So this book outlined historical records of missionaries going into several remote parts of the world in Africa, Asia, South America, and so on, finding out that these people who had never heard of the gospel knew that there was a God who had a son who walked the earth. Some of them had prophecies saying that the white men were going to come with a Bible to bring the gospel to them, even before any missionary ever came to them. Isn't that just so intentional of God? But it's also interesting that God leaves the sharing and the spreading of such great salvation to us, to mankind. He built expectation, but he also waited for men to go in there and share the gospel. I'm going to be sharing a few more stories from the book which will just blow your mind, but I highly do recommend that you get a copy and you read it yourself. And I'm not getting paid to promote this book, but it's just really, really good. And to Don Richardson, thank you for the amazing work compiling this book. This is amazing.